Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. This is our third episode with Dr. Olya Banchik. Absolutely loved this series of interviews of her story, her startup, and now in this episode, we talk about her advising other dentists as a transaction expert. So we'll dive right into this, and then I've got some exciting announcements after the show. Maybe you've thought about switching to Blue Sky Bio's implants, but you're not sure because you haven't had the chance to try them out in person and see for yourself. So I'm the type that when I'm on Amazon, when I'm on anything, I'm going to look at the reviews. I'm going to read the reviews, the good reviews, the bad reviews. I want to know exactly what I'm getting myself into. So I went on the 365 Digital Dentistry Facebook page and found a post of someone who said that they were finally looking to switch to Blue Sky Bio's implants. And someone asked on that thread, what makes one want to use Blue Sky Bio's implants over other clone or compatible systems? And what do they offer that larger name brand implants don't offer? I loved the responses here. This was awesome. One of the first responses was, better implants, better people, cost savings. Another one said, easy ordering, cheaper, cross-compatibility, innovation in the DIY CAD guided realm. Wade Pilling said, in my opinion, better service, better pricing, better cutting-edge technology, better implant design, better platform design, and a model that is kinder to general dentists. And then Baron Grutter said, my reason for liking the Blue Sky Bio Max line over Nobel, number one was cost, $99 to $135 for the implant. Number two, 30% stronger platform design. He's never seen one of the Blue Sky Bio implants flower or split during placement, whereas some of the narrow platforms of other brands have done that in the past. Number three, universal platform with a much better inventory, so a lot better options. Number four, Dr. Sheldon and Albert, who are experienced clinicians who will help with nothing in return. So fantastic support at Blue Sky Bio. Number five, ease of ordering. And number six, no rep pressure. And he said these reasons are not necessarily listed in order of importance, but in order of most significant difference. So you can see that these people who have been placing these implants, they love the cost, they love the convenience. In many cases, they believe they're actually a superior implant. To try out your first set of Blue Sky Bio implants, go to blueskybio.com/store and check out their 6 lines of cutting-edge dental implants and compatible parts. Okay, welcome back. We have with us for round 3, we very rarely have a multi-guest series where it's 2 or 3 or more episodes back to back to back to back. But we felt like this deserved multiple episodes, multiple conversations. Welcome back, Dr. Olya Banchik. How's it going?
Great. Thank you so much for having me again. It's been a lot of fun recording this.
I think it's awesome that you told me before the show that some of our listeners have been reaching out. I think especially that first episode where you just kind of made a mid-career decision of, screw it, let's burn it to the ground and start a life somewhere else. I think it was really refreshing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think, and I did actually get a lot of messages on Facebook about that. And some of the questions that I was getting had to do with, do I think it's better to go to a place where there's more opportunity for business and grow a practice and do something professionally, even though that may not be the best place for you or your family, or maybe not the place that you've been dreaming of your entire life, where you want to spend the rest of your life. Which way is a better way to go? So I've actually gotten a few questions like that after the first episode. And I thought that was interesting. And I think, well, for us personally, the first 15 years of our life, we sort of let life take us.
Okay.
And we definitely followed the business opportunities. We definitely followed where the jobs were at. Because originally we thought we were on our way to California. And I think we all know, I think we all know California is not the best place to be if you're a dentist.
Fair enough to say. Yeah.
I think we've established that, right?
Yep.
So unfortunately, and because it's a beautiful state. So yeah, and there's been a lot of really great feedback that I've heard after the podcast that we did, a lot of interesting questions and scenarios. And so It's been a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Well, for me right now, I'm coming back to Indiana, which is where I grew up in high school. I kind of didn't like Indiana at all. We moved here from Utah to Indiana. It was rainy. There was no mountains, super humid. At first didn't make a ton of friends. I had a bad taste and resentment towards Indiana for a long time. And even when we got married, I was like, oh crap, I married an Indiana girl. We're going to have to come back to Indiana. And I kind of knew it was coming eventually. But now I'm surprisingly, I don't know if it's just having lived in Fort Hood and Fort Sill, just kind of the butt crack of Oklahoma, or, just having lived in less desirable locations. I'm like, man, Indiana's not that bad. Plus opportunity. Like to me, this feels like it's not overcrowded. Insurance reimbursement rates are pretty good, and it's a business friendly state. And there's EFTAs. You don't even have to get certified to be an EFTA here. So I'm just kind of like looking at all of the pros. And so it's ironically, even though I'm not in Arizona or in Utah or somewhere out west that's a little bit more scenic, for me at least, the opportunity makes it exciting. So I think it can go either way.
Absolutely. I do think that there are certain states right now that are tough for dentists to be in. So I think it's fantastic that you are in Indiana and you are, I guess, kind of falling into liking it a lot, it sounds like. And because a lot of people I think live in places where they really don't like and they definitely don't love. And then, one day you wake up and you realize, wow, I am, 40 or 50 years old and I've lived in this place that isn't my favorite place. And what am I doing? And the good thing is that I think in our profession, we have the luxury of being able to decide where we want to live, no matter what. And even if sometimes it's not the easiest decision to make, professionally, we're able to go anywhere. Our skills are needed anywhere.
Totally.
And we're lucky. We are so lucky in that sense. I actually talked to someone a few months ago, and the wife was saying, well, we live in state X and the headquarters are here and there's really nowhere else we could ever go. So I have to just figure it out. And for us, that's not the case. Maybe there are certain places that are more luxurious. Maybe there are certain places where the business opportunities will allow a more lavish lifestyle. But at the end of the day, our profession is needed anywhere,
There's teeth
any
everywhere.
place. That's the beautiful thing about what we do.
No, that's a great
So,
point. I love it. And I think we box ourselves into thinking, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that. I think if people are going to choose opportunity over lifestyle for a period of time, being able to just embrace that can be hard, especially if you're sacrificing. But at the end of the day, like looking for the positives, and there's a certain income point in my mind, and maybe it's just because I haven't made this amount of income yet. It's like in my mind, I'm like, man, if I could make $400 or $500,000 a year as a dentist, then I'd be okay living most anywhere. And maybe that's not true. Once I live somewhere, maybe I wouldn't feel that way, even making that kind of money. But I think that's the kind of, if you can find an opportunity that is truly worth it. And I also would say that George, my co-host, is the perfect example of someone saying, no, I really want to live on the west side of Phoenix, and I'm going to find a practice here anyways. And not assuming that he couldn't find what he wanted, where he wanted. I think there's no wrong way to do it, as long as you're intentional and you're accepting the sacrifices you're making, and you're not kind of victimizing yourself in the situation and just saying, oh, well, we have to do this. Like, no, you're choosing to do this and make the most of it. Crush it. If you're going to go rural so that you can make more money, do that, and do it in a way that in 3 or 4 or 5 years that you could turn around and sell it if you wanted to and move somewhere you wanted. So I think the key is always just being intentional and making the most of any scenario, and not assuming that you can't have multiple things that you want. But those who are in super crowded markets in California and New York and Chicago, knowing that the opportunities aren't as plentiful and it will be a harder road. So it's just a balance of all of those opportunity costs.
And setting up your expectations appropriately is important also. If you are dying to live in California, by all means, I don't think any dentist has ever starved in California
Sure.
or any other place. I think you have to accept the fact that property values are high. Employment laws are very difficult, much more so than in most other states, with the exception of, states like New York or Washington, things like that. So you have to just accept these things that come with living there. And for those people that cannot see themselves living anywhere else, they can still survive. They can still make it out there, and they can still have the California lifestyle that they're looking for. And there's nothing wrong with making certain compromises and sacrifices. And we did that. We downsized and we gave up a very successful practice for the sake of a different life, a different lifestyle. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you and your family are on board, and you make your choices with an open mind.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't go wrong if you're intentional and you're moving in the right direction. Even if it takes you a few extra years, and you're going to figure it out eventually. So leading into that, your theme of, okay, picking up, moving, starting over, I think we got to the point where we had talked about the things that went well, the finances, your amazing contractor. Did we get into the bumps, the kind of things that didn't go so perfectly?
No, we didn't. And let's talk about some of those. And I think a few of those things are really important to mention, because I think the bumps that we had are the same bumps that many of our other startup dentists have.
Okay.
So I think that most of our issues, most of our startup complications had to do with the fact that it was a new construction. Even the building was brand new. So
Mm.
our address wasn't on the map.
So like zoning and setting up services, and you just like don't even exist yet.
You don't exist. And we were the second business to open in that location. So there was no internet service set up
Mm.
over there. The GPS, and the other problem was that our address, it was, whatever it was, the number in the street was in a town called Waxhaw. Well, they had this almost the same exact address that was 2 miles away in the town of Charlotte.
Oh, dang it.
And they were maybe 2 miles apart. So our dental chairs, when they were getting installed, they got delivered to the UPS store. I got a
Oh.
call from the UPS store, and they're like, they're trying to drop off a whole bunch of giant, dental equipment. And it was like 2 miles away.
Mm.
And that was just the beginning. Nobody could find us. The mail wasn't getting delivered. It was going to the post office. So just to get your mail, you had to go to downtown Waxhaw and stand in line to pick it up. The mailboxes weren't even built yet when we moved in.
Wow.
So
That's weird because no one on our show has mentioned doing a startup from the ground up. Like most of them have been in existing commercial spaces. So these are some problems unique to that, like from dirt to building situation, or just such a recent building. So there's like not even anything you can do about it. Like you can't plan for that. It's just you just have to accept like, oh, this is gonna suck. And every single time something gets delivered, every time you set up a service, every time you're trying to direct people there, it's just a headache.
it was a headache. It was a headache. So, and the other complication that we had was we realized our CPA said, well, you guys really need to open your practice in 2018. And we were planning on some time in February of 2019. We were not planning at all. Like time wise, we just weren't, that wasn't what we were trying to do.
Did that have to do with like the sale of your previous practice?
It did. It did. It had to do with tax reasons. And so we called our contractor and we said, hey, well, you know how you told us, February won't be an issue? It was literally like that. I said, well, how about end of December? And he said, well, this is the South and we like to take holidays and things are really busy. All of my contractors are really busy and the holidays, it was right around October. So we had Thanksgiving coming up, we had
Yeah.
Christmas coming up, New Year's, and everyone kind of likes to take that time and be with their family. And we're asking him for a 2.5 month build out.
Wow.
And he said, I'm sorry, I just can't promise you that that's going to happen. We can do everything we can. I'd love to work with you. And he was really nice about it, but he said, I'm not sure that we can swing that. So I said, well, that's okay. That's, that's, that's fine, but just try. And he did.
You're like, just do it anyways.
I said, well, please, and and please, and we were really nice about it, and he was wonderful about it. So they made it happen.
Do you feel like you got less picky with like change orders and stuff because you were like, well, if we change this and it could delay it further, like how do you feel like you were a little bit indebted at that point?
A little bit, but what's interesting is normally with these projects, whether we're building residential or commercial, I micromanage every step of the way. It's what I do.
Right.
I draw the plans, I look at every single thing, and I'm so highly involved. With this project, I was so hands off
Cool.
because they had it under control. And
You
we had
trusted
our
them.
hands full. I trusted them, and they had a full time superintendent on the job at all times. So I think I mentioned this before. These guys have been working with this contractor for over 20 years. So it
Right.
wasn't just random. They know dental, they knew what we wanted. The plans were really good and things were really well defined. The other thing that's really helpful, and I actually recommend this so strongly to all my clients and to everybody that is doing a startup or renovation, pre select all of your finishes.
Yeah, you talked about that, how he had a sweet little studio room with all of the finishes laid out.
That's right. That's right. We did talk about it. So that was really helpful. By the time we broke ground, we had the floor selected, we had the wallpaper selected. Whatever we were doing was a done deal. And whenever new things had to be approved, we just approved them really fast, whatever it was, the lighting or the plumbing fixtures. So that made it really easy.
No, that's really cool. Well, so you did so many things to prevent those hiccups. The new construction, is one that you just can't, even if you're doing everything you can to prevent it, you're shucks out of luck. So was there any other major hiccups or delays or regrets or pain points that you didn't expect?
There were a couple more. So one of the things, but this kind of has to do with all along the same lines, is all of our supplies were set to be delivered, and we had our grand opening day where we were actually seeing patients, and we realized on Saturday that our boxes were missing.
Oh no.
So we had a schedule full of patients. We had no lead apron, and
I feel like I've heard multiple startups where that's the issue, where it's like, the chairs are there, the x-ray tube heads and everything, but everyone's like, oh crap, we don't have a lead apron. It's like those
yeah,
things that you don't think of.
it was like a rookie mistake too. I'm like, how could this happen to us? It was just funny at that point. So we had to thankfully we have friends and they were amazing and they said, come on over, here's a lead apron.
Cool.
And then somebody broke a tooth and we didn't have a syringe. So I'm like, hey, can I borrow a syringe? Things like that. That was our first day. I mean, you're hanging on by like a thread, just hoping your staff shows up, everything goes smoothly. The level of anxiety is so high that first week. You want everything to go perfectly. And then you're missing your basics. So that actually happened to us. We got through it. The other thing that we did is, again, I actually cannot believe that we did this. We designed these beautiful mobile carts because everything had to match,
Right.
and the cabinets had to match, and the carts had matching countertops. And we even went as far as ordering, those rollerblade wheels so that your chairs that roll. They don't scratch the floors and they don't leave that sticky stuff everywhere.
You like switched out the wheels on all of your chairs?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We switched out the wheels on all of our chairs, but when we had the carts made, we said it's really important that you put these special rollerblade wheels on these carts because
Uh-huh.
they roll so much better and they don't leave marks on your floors, which is a big issue in offices where you have the chairs always marking up the floors.
Right.
So we made the carts too big and they cannot fit through the openings in our doors.
Oh, you have these massive carts with nowhere to go.
Yes. It's so painful because they're so
Oh,
beautiful and they have these nice solid surface countertops because everything needed to match. And
yeah.
they fit through one opening, but not the smaller one on the other side. So we have to like maneuver them into the room. And so it's not working. That's a big,
That's heartbreaking,
yeah, it is. It really, really is.
especially for someone as like organized OCD as you. Like these these carts are going to break your heart. I'm so sorry.
They, the carts are breaking my heart. And what's worse is that the cabinets was one of those things that was going to be our big holdup because the cabinet maker was so far behind that the reason we couldn't rush the project was because of the cabinets.
Mm,
So we went through the design and we custom designed all the cabinets, the sterilization, I mean every cabinet in the office. And that was the one thing that somehow just got overlooked.
ugh.
We spent so much time. We were just trying to rush through it to meet the deadline. So
So it just goes to show that even if you have experience, attention to detail, professionals who do this for dentists and contractors that do this for there's still going to be stuff that just doesn't go perfect.
always, always. And there's all these other little things that happen. I almost think sometimes it's harder to come into this after having done this for so many years because you don't have, in order to train, just for example, in order to train your staff, your team properly and set up all the systems that you want to have set up, it's not something you can do in a week. It's not something you can do in 2 weeks.
Right.
It's a process and it is an exhausting process. So I think that part was really frustrating for me because I wanted those systems to be set up ASAP. And it just wasn't possible to do it quickly. You know what I
Okay.
mean? It's a process. It's a long process. It's probably going to take us 6 months to a year to really figure everything out. So I think that was one of the hard things for me. Just as an example, the the previous office, where a lot of my team members came from, they didn't believe in taking patients' driver's licenses as a form of ID. They just kind of said, "Oh, we'll just take your insurance card. You're supposed
Okay.
to take the driver's license." You know what I mean? So just little things like that where I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean you're not asking for ID?" So
Right.
anyway, so it's taking a while to set up all these systems.
It's funny because I think we just kind of forget how much our team knows and we just depend on them and like all these things that over time they pick up and we're on the same page to have to start from scratch and have to do all that over again is difficult.
Exactly, exactly. The other issue that I think comes up all the time is whether to get a phone line because you want to get started on credentialing. That was another hiccup that we had. So you cannot get your credentialing with insurances started until you have a permanent phone line, or you really shouldn't, I should say. So you got to find a way. And
Why is that?
because you get listed in their system with a phone number, so you want to make sure it's not something you're changing. So
Mm,
you don't want to change your address, you don't want to change your phone number, you just want to provide them. It's so hard to go back and change these things after. So when you decide that you're ready to get credentialed with insurances, first of all, now we all kind of know that a lot of times you can negotiate,
mm,
which is a process, right? You negotiate your fees, you deal with third party administrators, which may provide higher fees for you. So that's a long process. Then you add to that a period where the applications are in, but it can take 6 to 8 weeks to get credentialed. So what do you do in the meantime? You have a practice. You have patients that are asking to go to a in-network provider. You cannot afford to lose the patients, right? You want to keep the patients, but you're not yet in network with their insurance. How do you handle that?
This is not something that I may or may not be experiencing very shortly. So I'm very attentive to the answer, because a transition is a great time, whether it's a startup or an acquisition. That's a great time to renegotiate fees and really get the best fees right up front. But yeah, you're left out of network, especially if you're negotiating and then trying to bring on other providers for an extended period of time. In my mind, my thought is, let's make sure we have patient financing and we're really good at helping the patients file their insurance, and reassure them and let them know, hey, we're getting things set up with the insurance companies, and they're big insurance, and so we want to make sure we're getting you guys the most benefits that we can. So we're negotiating these things. So it's just taking a little bit longer. So there's a few months here where we're just going to file your insurance as is out of network, but eventually we're going to be accepting your insurance. Is that acceptable to say? Like, am I allowed to say that hypothetically, very shortly?
Yeah, yeah, you are. Absolutely. There's a couple of issues. If you're just doing an exam, x-rays, regular cleanings, things like that, and I felt really comfortable telling patients, you know what? I don't know what your benefits are, because even verifying insurances as an out of network provider is so difficult. They don't want to
Mm,
give you any information. So the insurance verification process can be painful. So you really don't know what the benefits are. So I felt really comfortable telling patients, you know what? For your new patient first visit, we'll just take we'll just take assignment of benefits, and whatever the insurance company pays us, we'll just take that as payment in full. And sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes the benefits for out of network are totally great. Other times you have Delta who will send the patients the checks because you're out of network with them. So instead of sending the check to your office, they're sending it to the patient.
okay.
And no matter how much you explain to the patients that, hey, that's actually our payment that you're going to get, they still cash the check, they deposit it. So they really, they're getting paid to come see you
That's brilliant.
for,
I'm sure they love it. They better leave
they
you a good
do,
review at that point.
right? We had one patient who couldn't understand. Well, but they sent me the check. Why? I mean, why do you want me to give you payment? You told me this isn't going to cost me anything. So yeah. So we had a little bit of that, but overall it worked out. We had to do a little bit of write-offs for things that weren't covered that we couldn't verify. But the insurance verification or the insurance negotiation process is 100% worth it. It's worth the time, it's worth the money. It's, everyone should just do it.
Do
So
you have anyone that kind of does that third party insurance negotiation on your behalf that you would recommend to people?
yeah, I worked with Becky Baylock. She's out of Arizona. She's a very small business and she was wonderful. She was great to work with. I was
Cool.
very happy with the fees that she secured for us. And it was great. I've done a little bit of that myself in the past successfully without hiring anybody. But the issue becomes when you're new to the area, you're not familiar with all the plans, you're not familiar with all the third party administrator companies. So you just don't know a lot of these things. So I felt more comfortable having someone who's really an expert in that handling this part of it.
And it seems like, and we'll be talking about this much more in future episodes, but it seems like there's a bit of an art to it in terms of this insurance first and then that insurance, because you can use the first insurance's fee schedules because the second insurance will accept that. And so kind of negotiating it all, and the strategy of how you do it, whether you're doing it from scratch or whether you've got existing fees in place that you have to renegotiate. There's some nuance to it.
There definitely is. And it really has to do with knowing who the third party administrator companies are. Then there's the umbrella policies also that have other insurances, within it. But I think the hardest thing and the hardest thing about these negotiations is that you don't know who to call. And there's certain companies that you can find information on who to deal with readily available.
Right.
And there's others that you can't. So the amount of time that you're going to spend trying to research this and trying to figure out who is the local contact for this, third party administrator company, you could spend days and days and days doing it.
Banging your head against the wall, just miserable.
Yeah. But you can do it yourself, especially after a certain period of time. After 2 years, you already have the contacts, you know who they are, you know how the insurances work. It's something you can do on your own. It's just how much time do you want to spend learning all of it when you've got all these other things on your plate, trying to do a startup or a transition, an acquisition, whatever the case might be.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay, time for some Facebook reviews of Q Optics. The first one here is regret. This is someone who wished they could have had Q Optics Loop. They said, don't do, and they said a company name that we won't mention here, but it rhymes with fiber optic. Don't do fiber optic. Their customer service has been terrible for me and buddies from my same school. If I had the option, I definitely would have gone with Q Optics. Another one here by Setu. She says, I've researched and tried all of the different brands of loops, and Q Optics are the best loops, hands down. I got the prismatic and have noticed a huge difference in my work and posture. I like what Nick Hill did here. He said, a few classmates and I met the Oroscoptic, Surgitel, Designs for Vision, and Q Optics rep for lunch, each one on a separate day. Good call. That would have been bad to just invite them all for a big rumble. He says, I liked the Q Optics product the most lightweight, great design, no need for side shields since the frames are OSHA compliant, amazing customer service, and optical quality works well for me. I purchased the 3.5x non-prismatic. Okay, last review. Laura said, I have Q Optics Prismatic 4.0 and they are the best investment I've made in dental school. This was a post on a dental student Facebook page. And so there's a lot of like, my school didn't offer Q Optics. And then there's people saying, just buy them anyways. Like, this is 100% worth it. You're using these every single day. It's your neck, it's your back, it's the quality of your work. It's worth the investment no matter what, whether you're a dental student, whether you're a new dentist, whether you're an established dentist. These are just fantastic loops. Check them out at qoptics.com. Email sales@qoptics.com with the promo code SP19 for a discount on your loops and light combo. Before we move on, I feel like the name of the game in doing a startup is keeping your costs low while attracting as many patients as possible. And so is there anything that you have to say that would add to either of those points that you guys did that you were really happy with?
This is a tough question because, and we kind of touched on that beforehand, I think in the previous episode about having your budgets set up, pre-selecting your finishes and things like that. As I mentioned, we chose a general contractor that was not the cheapest. There were definitely ways to cut costs in the construction period. And we consciously made the decision to work with an expert. And anytime you're working with an expert, you're going to pay for an expert.
Right.
So the other thing is, again, after practicing for so many years, there are certain things that was really important for us to have that weren't a money saving strategy.
This is a everyday practice lifestyle decision, not if we were trying to run an extremely lean business, this is exactly how we would do it.
Exactly. So this was a lifestyle decision. And one of those was, a lot of times we don't recommend, you don't need to get a cone beam right away. Well, I've got my husband who's worked with a cone beam for many, many years, and he uses it all day long, every day for diagnosis, and it's so instrumental in diagnosis, for treatment planning, for implant placement. He uses it so much and he uses it all the time that we had to get a cone beam. So we definitely weren't able to save money there. The other expense that we had is we chose to buy a hard tissue laser.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. No, those are not cheap.
Not cheap at all. Not cheap at all. We've always had a soft tissue laser, but again, with the surgical procedures and with wanting to do certain other procedures, that was something that was important to my husband. So we ended up doing that. So definitely not saving money there. So I mean, you can equip a couple of rooms at a time.
Sure.
That's something that will definitely save you money. As far as hiring the staff, hiring the teams, there's also a range of salaries that we can pay. We felt that we wanted a team that was pretty strong and we were wanting to hire really quality people.
Yeah.
So again, you're talking about a certain
Caliber.
level of certain caliber, exactly, and you're going to pay for that. So I think, unfortunately, I'm not helping anybody save money over here.
So at the end of the day, now the only option is to get more patients quickly.
That's right. That's right. Our hope was that the patients were going to come and they were going to love the practice, and that's about it. And same with marketing. If you want to have patients come through the doors, you have to do a little bit of marketing and you have to budget for that also. So that's
What was your biggest ROI? And this is going to depend on your area. It's going to depend on what you're marketing and the type of practice. But this will kind of wrap up our startup discussion. What did you guys do marketing wise, and what got butts in chairs for you those first weeks and first months?
I really feel that we were able to wow a lot of our patients right away.
Cool.
They felt really comfortable coming into the office. They What was really cool that I didn't expect to happen. It was kind of one of those things that you can hope for, but you can't count on, is that a lot of our patients would leave the office and they would go and they would post about our practice in these Facebook groups, and they
Cool.
would say, I feel so comfortable, or I felt like the doctor really knew what he was talking about and we felt like we were really cared for. And that was amazing. So we got really great response from the community, from word of mouth right away. Visibility was very helpful. We are very visible, big sign, bright sign. We talked about that. So that was instrumental. We were able to have our story be published in a couple of the local publications.
Okay, cool. How do you go about, like, that might be weird for some people. How, like, I want to be in a newspaper. How do you go about doing that?
I think you need to have something. First of all, you have to have a story and you have to have something to talk about that would make them want to come in and publish it. And I think our journey and what we did and how we wanted to be a part of the small town, how we just wanted to serve the people in the small town, I think that resonated with the publishers and they really liked hearing about it. I think maybe it was that.
Cool.
Maybe it was being in the right place at the right time. One other really cool thing happened is we were talking to one of these publications about advertising with them. And I said, well, hey, what if I do a column, like an advice column
Hmm.
from a dentist perspective? How would
Yeah.
you guys feel about that? And they loved the idea. So now I have to write an article every single week. Not every month, it's every week.
Wow, that's like a podcast.
It's like a podcast. So if you have any ideas, please send them my way. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's fun.
If you need me to submit some, like, underhand pitch, just some slow pitch questions to you, I just hit me up and be like, "Hey, Richard, can you make up a new email and email this newspaper, and
Yeah,
I'll come up with some stuff for you."
please do. I need all the help I can get here. But that was one of the really cool things that happened. And we also have a relationship with the local schools that our kids are a part of. And my son plays lacrosse for the middle school.
Cool.
And we were making mouth guards for all of their teams, which we loved doing that. We just wanted to support the school, but the response was really great from the families.
Cool.
So I think it's really word of mouth mostly.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like, I didn't hear AdWords. I didn't hear mailers. Maybe some of those things were involved, but it sounds like if they were, those were just the starting point. Those weren't what has led to your success. So share with us a little bit of like, do you feel like you're going to be profitable within a year, within 6 months? Do you feel like you're having enough patients? What were your expectations for new patients and where are you guys at?
I was in my projections, I was hoping to have between 20 and 25 new patients for the first few months.
Okay,
And we ended up at pretty much 60, 65
cool.
that was in the last month, which was our second month.
Wow.
So we really, it exceeded what my best hopes were.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we're really grateful. We're grateful for how it's going. We're grateful for the community support. And so it's been overall, it almost kind of solidifies the fact that I think we did make the right decision,
Yeah,
and everything is sort of pointing to the fact that everything is going to be okay. So all of that fear and anxiety that we all experienced as part of this transition,
right.
I think I'm just now kind of starting to calm down a little bit. And
Can finally like breathe out. Like you've been holding your breath the whole time.
the whole time holding my breath and saying prayers and just hoping that everything will be okay. So hopefully we're getting there.
That's awesome. Well, it's cool to catch you just on the tail end of all of this whirlwind and to be able to hear that you're experiencing success and that it's all working out. So I want to shift gears now. This has been really cool to get your perspective on the startup. But somehow we started all this off with someone on my Facebook page recommending you as a consultant advisor for people doing transitions and for people who want to have some help, they want to have some support. So how did you go from clinical dentistry to part-time kind of helping docs transition and buy and sell practices?
I think my passion has always been on the business side of things.
Cool. That's why we're friends already.
It is. Yeah. You and I hit it off right away too.
Totally.
It was a very, yeah, it was very quick. It really, there are two parts to owning an office. One's the clinical part and one is the business part. And having done both, I've always gravitated to the business part of it. And my husband, as I keep mentioning, he's an amazing dentist clinically, and he doesn't enjoy the practice management part of it. He doesn't love it. He doesn't want to deal with it. So I've always kind of just done it.
Cool.
And it's been many, many years. And through those years, we've been a part of almost every aspect of dental practice transition or transaction. And the amount of experience that we have gained through all of it has been just enormous. So what what started happening is I've started to get a lot of phone calls from dentists who needed my help or who needed an opinion or who didn't know how to look at a practice, whether it's a good idea to buy it or whether, there's a lot of problems that we can foresee, or how do you do a startup? How do you train your staff? How do you protect your practice from embezzlement? What are all the systems that go into a practice? So all of these things, and I started to realize that a lot of us dentists need this advice, and they need to have a friend almost that they can call and ask for their opinion and ask for their guidance and ask for a strategy and how to best do that. So I've started working with startups, and I've started working with practice buyers, helping them make the decisions, helping them analyze the numbers, helping them analyze the opportunities that they have to see which opportunity is better. And a lot of times I work with existing practices where we help set up their systems. We help protect them from, all sorts of bad things that can happen in a dental practice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's what I do.
So how long ago did you realize like maybe I should start charging people because people keep asking me. Like when did this become like a little side hustle rather than just helping out friends?
I've been doing this for a few years now. And lately I find myself, I'm probably working more than full time on this. And I'm starting to really kind of catch momentum with this. But at the same time, what I do is still so small. It's just me, and I work directly with the dentist that I work with. So it's really just been, I've been getting busier and busier in the last 6 to 12 months, I would say.
Okay. And we're hoping that being on this show overwhelms you with clients and that you have to make some decisions about scaling and hiring people or doing it all yourself. I hope those are good decisions that we get to help you with. But one of the things
Thank you.
that you mentioned before the show was that you were talking some of our listeners out of buying a dental practice, or were those independent people, not from our show? It's okay either way.
Yeah, I have had a couple of dentists that I've worked with that I felt for one reason or another that practice ownership or startup in particular wasn't the best idea for them at this time. And there were things that had to happen before they, dive in and go on this startup or an acquisition journey. And the reasons for that have been various. And my opinion is always own all the way. Everyone should own a dental practice as much as possible. It's definitely a much more rewarding way to go. But at the same time, we have to realize that practice ownership is not for everyone. And there are certain things that have to happen and you have to be prepared for before you jump into it. So,
What's the checklist? What are the things that you're looking out for?
well, I think in this day and age, part of what we do as dentists clinically, we have to be strong enough to handle the demands of a practice. It's it would be really tough to survive as a practice owner if your scope of procedures was limited. So, for example, there's lots of dentists, myself included, that didn't love doing oral surgery or endo or anything that was more complicated than, fillings and cosmetic dentistry. And these practices are hard to sustain, especially as a startup.
Mm.
It's very hard unless you can guarantee a super steady flow of patients that will keep you busy. I think it's very difficult to sustain a practice without doing those other procedures.
Okay, so my co-host George is going to enjoy this part of the series, especially because he just does not like startups. We were at, do you know Ashley, or have you heard of or seen the group, The Making of a Dental Startup
Yeah,
Facebook page?
I love that group. Yes, absolutely.
We were with Ashley and her husband at Voices of Dentistry, or not Voices of Dentistry, the Dental Success Summit a couple weeks ago. And that's like all George could talk about was why he thinks startups are a bad idea. I'm like, George, she has a Facebook page all about startups. You can't just trash talk startups to Ashley. And and he did anyways. It was great. That's a teaser for a future episode. So
I would love to hear his opinion as to why. I don't disagree. It's not for everybody, and you have to be really cautious, right? When
yeah.
doing a startup and
Oh yeah.
it has to be like a perfect storm of opportunities that have to come together, and location and competition, as well as what we just talked about with the clinical part, all of these things being a huge part of it.
It's I think a startup is just so much easier to screw up royally. Like it's so much easier to get in over your head, to realize that you have no clue how to run a business, to do it with the wrong demographics, to blow through your costs, to not understand marketing. It's like you have to be a great clinician, a great chairside dentist, your manner, your ability to build trust. You have to be a great leader and trainer and teacher of employees. and be able to stomach the risk and the slow growth and the ups and the downs. It's just it's so much more demanding of a skill set, and to ask a new dentist to come to the table with that deep of a skill set of business owner, of clinician, of leader is really difficult. And it's really difficult for us to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, do I have that skill set? Because we all think we do. We all think like, oh yeah, I'm a good leader and I'm a good dentist and I could run a business. And so and people fall in love with areas that they shouldn't fall in love with, and demographics that are awful, and then stuff hits the fan. And when you have all of the factors against you, when the crap hits the fan, then everything blows up. Versus if you stack the cards in your favor and then you hit the bumps, which we're all going to hit the bumps, those bumps don't derail you and don't like make you question your life and everything that you've done up to this point. So I just think there's so much more risk and so much more at stake with a startup. And I think that's why George feels the same way.
There's definitely a lot of risk. And I think being a new dentist, fresh out of school, a startup is probably not the best way to go.
Mm.
There has to be a few years of experience, both clinically and seeing how a practice runs.
Right.
What I will say is today's dentists that are graduating and that are listening to these podcasts, they have so much information on how to run a business, how to do a startup. Between your group and Ashley's group, the business of dentistry, all of these amazing groups are such a great resource for these dentists. And that is something none of us ever had. So the level of education that they have is ultimately greater than what any of us had before. And that sort of, speaks in favor of a startup. However, I will say there are a lot of practices that are out there that are on the market that are not great investments either.
Right. No, totally.
Yeah, you have to be really, really, really careful in an acquisition. You have to look at so many things. You have to make sure that you'll be able to take the practice and grow it and look at things that will make you a better practice owner and how you can improve the systems, how you can improve the patient flow, because now you're going to have this big loan to pay that you didn't have before.
Right.
So buying an existing practice can be tricky as well. You have to do a lot of due diligence. And this is something that we work on all the time, that these are the things we look at. These are the things that are important to check. So yeah, I think mistakes can be made either way.
No, totally. And we tend to downplay. We are admittedly an acquisition biased show. We tend to downplay the risks of a bad acquisition, and that's why we were like, okay, we're going to do an acquisition season. We want to give people the tools to be able to identify those lemons. And so anyone who's listening to this and doesn't realize we have seasons, you can go back. Season 2, we did 44 episodes on acquisitions. We did a ton of episodes on valuation and red flags and things to watch out for. And if you guys feel like, oh, you still have questions after that season, please reach out to us and let us know on the Facebook group. Like, hey, it'd be really nice to get some refresher episodes on X, Y, or Z, on valuation, on other things, because we want to give you those tools. But no, you're absolutely right. And that's where hiring a coach, hiring a quarterback who can kind of help you have a perspective on these things, because you've never done them before, is so valuable. So tell me, do you mind? I guess this isn't fair to ask you. So you charge hourly, which I think is fantastic. I love that that's your business model, because it's just like, if the job takes more, it takes more. If it takes less, it takes less. Here's the advice. Here's the expertise. Here's what I would do. Why did you make the choice to do that rather than be like a quote unquote buyer's broker and take a percentage of the deal or charge a flat fee for your relationship? What led you to decide on the hourly structure?
I think that one of the things that I love about what I do is, so far, 100% of everyone that I work with come to me through word of mouth.
Mm.
And I absolutely love that. So I feel that my job is to make sure that I do the best possible job for my clients. And not everybody needs the same level of help as others. So I think that doing it this way allows me to help dentists do as much or as little as they need me to do for them. There are certain cases where they need me to step in and they need me to look over the lease or the letter of intent or to help them put it together and to talk about all the pitfalls of a lease, which could be a show all, all
We've done a
by
couple of them.
itself.
No, totally.
Oh, yeah. There's just so much to talk about, right? When you talk about negotiating the right lease. So there's other dentists that want me just to evaluate the practices and tell them that how I feel about the opportunity and why and what are the problems that they're going to face. And so the level of involvement that I have with different clients is very different and it's very customized. In this way, it made it much better because there's really no commitment on their part. They're not required to work with me a certain number of hours. I'm there to do as much as they need me to, as little as they need me to. I'm always available for them. And it just seems to work. It works really, really well. And I never want someone to be like, oh, well, I'm in this, 1 year commitment and I'm stuck. So
Mm.
it really doesn't happen, but I also never want anyone to feel that way. And I want to make sure that whoever we're working with, it's helping them.
That's so awesome. I love that it's just clean, simple, straightforward. I'm here to help, here to provide value, and whatever someone needs, you can kind of fill in those gaps. So if someone is thinking about a startup or an acquisition, when would be the right time to reach out to you? Like at what point in someone's journey of, they're already looking at practices versus they're thinking about it, where do you feel like is like the perfect time to reach out to you for help?
So I love to look at concrete data and information. So when I get a call from someone and they say, hey, I'm looking at about 2 to 3 practices, I have all the information, help me decide. That is one of my favorite things to do, to look
Cool.
at the practice information and to say, okay, these are the issues you're going to face. This is how you overcome them. This is what you need to do next. This is how you get financing, and really just walk them through the process every step of the way. And the same thing with startups. I get a call about, okay, so we have 2 or 3 locations and we have these leases, and what do you think? And how do we do this? And what's the next step? How do we come up with a budget? That's another big one, is budgeting. So I help with all of that. How do I write a business plan? My lender is requiring this, that, and the other, and I don't have all the answers.
Mm.
So I really like to deal with very concrete scenarios where I know that I can help make the right decisions. Yeah, that's usually the best way to go, is you got to start somewhere.
No, and that's perfect. That's like before that point, you can maybe help someone with the question of if or should they, but like that's where the rubber hits the road and where you're going to make those mistakes is buying the wrong practice or falling in love with a practice, even though it doesn't have great numbers and there's a lot of red flags. And so having that objective extra set of eyes looking at them saying, well, did you look at this, this, and this, and this is huge. And the thing that's crazy about these decisions and about the transition process that I love and fear at the same time is that it's just you're setting yourself up for success or struggle for years to come. And so these little decisions and how much you care about this transition process can greatly affect the trajectory of your entire career. And that's why we've dedicated a podcast to it and why we've had all these questions is because these decisions matter and there's not a ton of answers out there. So it's amazing to find people like you who are dedicated to helping people in this critical time, in this critical space where there isn't an abundance of information and where a lot of the incentives with the seller and the seller's broker aren't in the favor of the buyers. So it's awesome that we have another person that we can just wholeheartedly endorse on the show, because George and I ran into this where people would send us practices and like at a certain point, we just couldn't do it anymore. We didn't have enough time because we weren't charging. We were just helping people out. And so I love that you've set up a system and a price point and a balance in your system of how you do this, that you can continue to help people in this critical time. So we're just so excited to have you as someone that we can send people your way.
Thank you. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to help them. I absolutely love doing this. This is my passion. So I work so much because I love it. So I'm sure you know you know how that
Yeah.
is.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Cool. We'll have your contact information down in the show notes. Again, people can reach out to you via Facebook or your email. We'll have that down there. Thank you so much for coming on for 3 parts. Hopefully here soon, you're going to interview me about some transition news, but I still can't talk about it yet. And I am very frustrated about it. So we'll get into that later, but it's been a blast to hear your story on our show. I've been honored.
Thank you. Thank you. So I've been honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I cannot wait to talk to you about the things that are going on in your life.
Awesome.
We'll do that soon.
Perfect. We'll talk with you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for reaching out to Dr. Banchik and letting her know how much you appreciated her story and her perspective. That means a lot to us when you reach out to our guests on the show and express that. So thank you to everyone who did that. We really loved, like I said, her whole story. So and looking forward to doing some more episodes with her. So some exciting news. We are going to be doing some more podcasts. We're going to be releasing another few shows here and building shared practices a little bit further. So if anyone is interested in being a host on a podcast, contributing to shared practices, to what we're building, we're going to have instructions here soon. And this is going to be an opportunity. We're going to have a whole funnel, a whole way for people who want to be involved in one of the shows that we're putting out to test out their podcasting skills and decide if this is for them. And if it is, and you're good at it and we could pull it off, then we'd love to have you as part of our shows. So details incoming. A little bit got teased on our Facebook group with a podcast called Amalgam. It is not about amalgam, but we'll let you figure it out. So we'll talk with you guys next time on the Shared Practices podcast.